Have you ever wondered why that it doesn't seem to be as how hard you work, you never seem like you can get ahead? Well, I'm here to tell you that hard work does not equal wealth. Now let's get into it. Forgive the windy day. It's a blistery fall day today, and the wind is blowing at almost a constant 30 or so miles an hour out here. We live in southeast Kansas, and it's just constantly blowing. So to try to find a little bit of a calmer area, came behind the pond dam, and you can see the buffalo feeding in the background. So let's get into this. When I was younger, all the way probably up to about 30 years old, I really prided myself on being an extremely hard worker. I got the compliment, and this didn't just happen once, but it happened numerous times from numerous different people, that Noah, you are the hardest worker that I have ever known. Now, if I was the hardest worker that these people had ever known, then I should be, according to my philosophy back then, should be one of the wealthiest people that they know. That wasn't the case, clearly. Because at 30 years old, I was $32,000 negative in credit card debt, and everything was weighing on top of me. We were on the verge of bankruptcy. After that, we had lawsuits against us. It was a mess, an absolute mess. So if I was the hardest worker that they had never known, then how could I be in such a disaster spot? Something changed for me when I was about 30 years old. Changed the way I saw things. Now, I'm not here to tell you that hard work is inherently bad. It's not. Hard work is a good thing. I try to instill in my kids hard work all the time. But hard work in itself does not equal wealth. It does not. If you have hard work up here, your wealth bank account is not going to be the same. Why? Well, it depends upon what you're working on. Back when I was working hard, it was in a field that was going to get me to the top of that class, I guess you could say, but it wasn't going to get me any farther. I had a boss, and this isn't a brag, so don't take it this way, but I had a boss at one point. He pulled me aside, and he told me, he said, "Noah, you're too good at what you do." And I didn't understand at all what he meant. I said, "What do you mean I'm too good at what I do?" He said, "You got to understand, the company that you currently work for values people that are really good at what they do. But the way they value them is they put them in that field that they're really good at, and they never leave." He was such a cool boss to have, because that was something that really kind of changed. It was part of what changed my thinking on this. By telling me I was too good at what I would do, what does that mean? Well, that means I'll never excel beyond what I'm doing. I don't say this in a bragging manner. I say this in an explanation manner. But I was what they call a press feeder, okay? So you're like the second man on a commercial press operation, okay? I was at that location. I was the best press feeder there was. Now, why do I say I was the best press feeder there was? Because when they had trouble running the machine on my days off, they would call me and say, can you possibly come in and get this to work? That happened over and over and over. Now, there was other people that did well, and I was really good at it, and I was a really, really hard worker. So then, why does that translate over to being in debt, not being able to pay my bills, not being able to pay my dues, and being financially unstable? The things I focused on to work hard on were the wrong things, ultimately. So, that being said, then where do you put your focus? Do you work really hard? Or do you just say, no, forget it. I'm not going to work hard. That's circumstantial, to be honest. What I do now, compared to what I did then, I doubled, tripled my salary. I work a lot less hard on what I do now, but I'm a lot more efficient, and I'm a lot, it translates to my bank account as being a higher level because I've focused on what to work hard on. And not only working hard, but I've changed to what I try to work smarter on. You ever heard of the saying, work smarter, not harder? There's a lot of truth in that. It's not that hard work is evil, and it's not that hard work is a bad thing. It's what are you working hard on? And if you are working hard or harder on your job than you are on yourself, where is that going to get you? In that scenario, so windy, it's about ready to take my camera over. In that scenario, you're going to get a really happy boss. You might excel in that company. You might not be like the company I worked for. They might say you're going to go from being on the ground floor of this machine to maybe operating this machine. So maybe you're making $30,000 an hour, or not an hour, but a year, and now you're going to make 35 or 40. But if you don't work smarter, you won't advance to the places you need to advance to. It's when I understood that. Now, if you already understand this, it might seem simplistic to you, but for around 30 years-ish, I didn't understand this principle. I always heard the term work smarter, not harder, but until it just shifted inside my brain that I was working hard on the wrong things, that is when it changed for me. And that's when it can change for you also. So, that being said, here's some examples. I was driving an hour and a half from my home to my work at one point. An hour and a half one way. Sounds crazy to think about now. To work a warehouse job to make $16 an hour, and I was really good at what I did. And everybody said it. You are a really good warehouse worker. And during that time frame, they said, you're one of the hardest workers, or the hardest worker I've ever known. Why? Well, because I was a really good warehouse worker. I would show up early, drive an hour and a half in, show up early before everybody else, and leave after everybody else. And then I'd go home and literally build my house. Built a house with my own two hands. And then we tried to start a buffalo farm on the land too. So I was fencing, I was building a house, I was driving to work. Literally, there wasn't enough hours in the day to get it all done. That's the point, believe it or not, that's the point that I was $32,000 in credit card debt and literally had lawsuits coming against me. So, like I said, if hard work equals wealth, then why was I where I was? It doesn't. So, what shifted? What changed? And what can change for you? I decided to say, instead of working really hard on these things are not priority anymore. I changed the priority to something that was going to move the needle. There's something in sales that you'll learn if you ever get a sales job, or if you have a sales job currently. It's a phrase, it's called what moves the needle. So what that means is what you're currently working on, is the needle moving in the direction you want it to move? So what you are a quote unquote the hardest worker that you know, if someone gives you that compliment, I highly, highly recommend you reflecting on that compliment. Instead of taking it at face value like I did, take and think about what they're complimenting you on. So if they say, man, Johnny, you sure work on your car really well. And you are the hardest person that I know that works on their car. Now, is working on your car going to get you to gain wealth? A lot of people would say it is, because you're saving money. I would say it is not. We'll get into this in some more later episodes that I'm going to talk about. But when you're doing things for yourself that you could have someone else do, and you're a really hard worker on that, I challenge you that that is not the thing that is going to get you wealth, if that's what you're trying to do. Now, should you be wealthy? That is up to our Creator, and that's up to how hard you want to work on the right things. So, should we be wealthy? I don't know. Should you? Should I? That's something we all have to answer. But, should you do everything you can that's in front of you? Should you say, I've been handed this deck of cards, am I going to play them, or am I going to sit and watch everybody else? Now, I will argue that that is biblical. That is something that God tells us, yes, you are. Now, if using this deck of cards gets you wealthy, then yes, you're supposed to be wealthy. Now, if using that deck of cards doesn't make you wealthy, then you're not supposed to be wealthy. It's simple, but it's not. But here's the thing. If you use everything at your disposal, and you admit this, you are able to admit that I have used all my resources, every resource in front of me, to provide for my family, to gain wealth, to be able to help others. If you're able to say that, then, and you're not, then you're okay, right? If you're not wealthy and you used all those resources up, then you're okay. I challenge anybody who's watching, though, to tell me that they could make that statement. I know I couldn't. There's no possible way I could make that statement that I've used every single resource I've been handed, every opportunity to put my family, to help others in a better situation. You know what that is right there? Let me light this cigar again. I'll tell you in a second. That is something that's something called Teresa Lespedeza. Okay? This is a great example. These buffalo behind me, they don't eat it. It's too stocky. It's too sharp. Doesn't have a good flavor to it. So they won't eat it. Now, do you know how much Teresa Lespedeza I've got on my property? It is literally covering almost the entire thing. Not every square inch, but in patches, almost the entire thing. Now, I am not a fan. You might be. I am not a fan of goats. Okay? But something interesting about goats. They think this stuff is candy. They will literally go after this and eat it before other things. Now, why? Well, it's the difference of the goats will eat more of a shrub and the buffalo eat more of grass, okay? So you can get into the weeds of why one or the other. But my point being, you can have an entire field covered with Teresa Lespedeza, and you can say, well, there's only so many amount of buffalo that I can put on this field. So I can only keep, let's just say, 10 buffalo on this field behind me. And that's all it's going to support. You know, and I can't pay my bills. So this is just where I'm at. This is where God wants me. Okay. Could it be that the thing that you don't like, goats, I don't care for, could it be that you could double or triple or quadruple your income on this field by putting goats on it, and now you have buffalo eating grass and goats eating the Teresa Lespedeza, and you have the exact same amount of buffalo, and now you have all these goats? Now, is that something I'm going to do? Actually, yes. Talked to some people on it and discovered what the problems I'm having, and I'm using the resources around me even though it's not something I care for. I'm not a big fan of goats. But guess what? I've got a resource here that goats can consume, turn into protein, and you can go sell it at market and collect a check. That scenario is the same for you if you look for it. Now, is goats and buffalo the only thing that you could say will run together in this field? No. That's what's so cool. Is like, I could look at this field and I could say, well, maybe I could run goats on there, huh? Now, if I run goats on there, they probably need some protection from coyotes. So now we'll run some guard dogs, and those guard dogs might have babies, and now we'll be able to sell those babies, and so on and so forth. There's always things you can build on. But you have to look at it that way. You have to stop saying, I want to be a really hard worker and then gain wealth or be able to pay my bills better that way. If you work 40 hours a week, making $30,000 a year, and you work twice as hard, 80 hours a week, and let's just, without all the overtime and everything else, let's just say you get to $60,000 a year, you doubled how hard you worked, and you got to that point. Is it worth it? Are you capped at 60? Yes. Unless you start thinking differently, unless you say, I'm going to shift the way I think over to a different type of job, something that's maybe commission based, something that will move the needle in a different direction, you're capped. You're capped there, and now you're stuck at, great, all I can do is make $60,000 a year, and if I slow down working from 80 hours a week, I'll go back down to 30. It's that philosophy you got to get out of. That is the philosophy, that's one of the philosophies I had to get out of in order to move forward. And when I did, things changed for me. And they can change for you also. Hopefully you've enjoyed some of this content and you've picked up some things that are a little newer, that you've maybe helped shift your thought process. Maybe this can track into something that you're currently doing that you can say, maybe I don't need to put my focus there. Or maybe I can create multiple streams of revenue off of that thing that I was trying to do that was only creating one. Who knows? We'll see you guys next time. My name is Noah Gordon. Have a good one.